A leader of the glam rock movement and an early champion of punk, Marc Bolan was always ahead of the curve. This was both an advantage and a stumbling block to the mop-headed T-Rex bandleader whose unique approach to pop soundcraft is highlighted in this wonderful documentary film called Angel-Headed Hipster, The Songs of Marc Bolan and T-Rex. Beautifully done. Big fan of T-Rex and Marc Bolan, and it's a thrill to be able to talk to the director of this wonderful documentary, Ethan Silverman. Ethan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. Nice to be here.
But let me ask you, in terms of where you were, how you got into the to this world of Marc Bolan. When did all that happen for you?
As you were saying to me at the beginning of our conversation, I was a very big David Bowie fan. So I was in my early teens and very familiar with glam rock and that period of music. However, there was a big hole, which was Bolan and T-Rex, because, Bolan never really broke in America the way he did in the UK and Japan and other places in Europe. I knew of him, and I certainly knew Get It On, Bang a Gong, but I was working on another project with my producing partner on this project, Bill Curbishley, who is the manager of The Who, and when he was running Track Records, which was The Who's label, he knew Marc Bolan and had done some work with them, and he brought him up to me and said, "You really should familiarize yourself with this catalog." And once I did, I just did a very, very deep dive. And I not only loved the music and the songs and the feel and the vibe, I realized how influential he was in all the music that came after him, as he was influenced by the people who came before him. And I just went deeper and deeper in my research. And then I had an idea to create an album and a film. And Bill helped get it going. And that's really what happened. It was an obsession. And I went deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of T-Rex. And here's where I ended up.
So I must have missed this part. So were you the kind of driving force behind the album?
Oh yeah, the album was my original idea.
Okay,
And
let's say the name of the album. Sorry, go ahead.
Angelheaded Hipster. It's the same.
Hey,
Angelheaded Hipster, the songs of Marc Bolan and T-Rex. See, Bill and I were working on a theatrical play in which we were going to use songs from the 70s from British bands. And that's why Bill said I should look deeper into the music of T-Rex. And then that project kind of went away because we got involved with another project, but I was still obsessed with the songs of T-Rex. And then I said, "Oh, why don't we make an album and bring the songs back and bring them fresh and reintroduce the catalog to a whole new generation of people?" And he said, "It's a great idea, except nobody's going to pay for that." And then I said, "Well, what if I film the album, making of the album, and make a documentary around it and create something archival as well about glam rock and David Bowie and Elton John and all those people in context of the T-Rex music?" And he said, "Well, I think it would be easier to raise the money to make the album if you do that." So that's how it happened.
got a lot of great people helping out
Sure
in
did.
this endeavor. Just in the album, the Angel-Headed Hipster. I just a few of them just to run through the list, and there's a couple in here that I was they were unexpected in some sense. You have Ringo Starr, Nick Cave. Hal Willner is the producer on this, Joan Jett, David Bowie. One of my favorites, and she does a great job in the film, is Maria McKee, a singer I think is kind of got lost. She was I saw her when they first came out as Lone Justice. I saw her literally their first tour, and she had an amazing voice. And over the years, I don't want to wax too poetically here about one particular artist because
Right.
there's so many, but I'm glad you had her on because she doesn't
Oh,
really get much run.
yeah, I agree. Maria McKee is actually a friend of Hal Willner's,
Okay.
and who's now unfortunately passed away. Now,
Yeah.
and I knew Maria a bit because we had a lot of mutual friends from the kind of downtown theater scene in New York years ago. But she was really Hal's choice. She is also I don't know how exactly, but she's very much in the universe of U2, of Bono and The Edge and their friend Gavin Friday. And I actually think Gavin Friday suggested Maria to Hal. These things just
Yeah,
kind of go around, and I was thrilled because she's got such a beautiful voice, and
she does.
I hope I captured her spirit in the studio because she's very funny, very warm, and and has a beautiful voice and has a strong artistic point of view as a musician, as a
Yeah.
singer.
Thank you for indulging me in that particular, because there's so many, as you mentioned, you two, Joan Jett, Ringo Starr, Nick Cave. There's so many people in the film who were either influenced by them or, and I don't remember this, but Ringo talked about it, and so did Marc Bolan on in an archive footage about somebody said, "Well, you said you were the next Beatles," something along the lines of you were going to be the next Beatles, and he said, "No, they said." Was that Ringo who said that about Mark's
I,
potential? Was
I
that?
I think so. Two things. One is the Beatles had peaked and broken up.
Yeah,
The other is that three things. The other, he was fresh. His
yeah,
sound was new. It was fresh, and he certainly was not imitating the Beatles. And the third thing is that they, one thing they both had in common was a fan base of young teenage girls.
yeah,
And they both captured the fervor and intensity
yeah,
of young girls and in their early days. And, that's something to both help tremendously get top 10 singles and sell out concerts, but it's also something that they had to carry to get through to prove, no, we're really musicians. We're writing great songs
yeah.
and we're doing them well. We're not just teeny bopper fodder. In that sense, I don't think we here are not aware of how huge T-Rextasy was for that brief moment where the girls were going absolutely nuts for him.
Thank you for again another sidetrack. I didn't mean to go too far down that road, but it's
Ever.
part of his story, and I think you're right in the context of just how big he was in Britain. It's hard to for us here in America, and you're right. I remember him. I mean, he was sort of like there was a bright, shining moment for me and T Rex and Marc Bolan, and it lasted about a year and a half, and then
Mhm.
it seemed to fade away. I always had a fond memories of his music, the personality, kind of the gender pushing kind of thing that he was doing. But by that time, Bowie had already kicked in over here too. So there was like, well, I don't know. I mean, it's unfortunate as you see in here in the film, the early stuff, the kind of very much almost the spiritual music that he was producing early on. And not just that, the influence he had on so many people, so many different people. Let's talk about that.
So Tyrannosaurus Rex is what you're referring to,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
was more Donovan-esque, hippy dippy, and it was just him with a guitar and a bongo player. He was quite well regarded in the music scene when
yeah,
he was doing Tyrannosaurus Rex. And this, when he went electric and started putting the glitter on his face and doing all of that, I think a lot of people in the serious music press thought it was an abandonment of a kind of pure way of approaching folky music and the whole kind of Glastonbury spirit and all of that. And that was a little controversial, but he became a big star very fast and very influential. But the Bowie thing, I think I dealt with it pretty well in the
yeah.
film.
You
Um,
did, you
I,
did.
but the Bowie thing was a curse and a blessing, and but they were, as a friend of theirs said to me, two peas in a pod. It wasn't so much one stealing from the other. It's just they had a similar outlook and a similar way of pushing the boundaries of
Yeah.
both music and performance. And they did it very differently. If I had a perfect answer to why things last and don't last, and why some things become successful and some things don't, we'd all have a different life because we don't know. And sometimes it's the zeitgeist, it's just hitting at a certain moment and
Right.
it clicks. And other times someone's behind the curve, ahead of the curve, or it's just not the right moment. You don't really know. And then the media outlets really have a lot of influence on
Yeah.
what they're going to push and not push. There was no TikTok then. There was no
Yeah.
people were not just showing up
Yeah.
in a big way. There was a machine, its own kind of machine that you had to kind of go through to get.
Well, I would amend that. I agree with everything you said. I would just amend it by saying, well, one way to decide or to make some kind of judgment is we're sitting here 40 years, 45 years later, and we are talking about Marc Bolan not as a flash in the pan, not as a gender pushing personality, but on the quality of the music and the impact that people to this day. And one thing it's pointed out in the film, which I loved and I never would have thought, which is he was a best-selling author. The kind of stuff that he wrote was popular. He was a good writer.
Well, he had a sense of things. He was a poet, and he was the best-selling British poet in England one year, and he was heavily influenced by Tolkien and The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Now, those books were huge bestsellers then, but they weren't what they became with the movies of Peter Jackson later and all of that. So he had foresight 50 years before that happened of their meaning in the culture. And then you see, he was a friend of Stan Lee. He thought superheroes, which are related to Tolkien,
Yeah,
that superheroes were going to be this massive cinematic explosion. Now, how strange is that? How strange that he not it wasn't that he was trying to predict anything. This is a guy who was just speaking his heart and his passion and his own influences. And I find that extraordinary. And he was also, and white artists have been stealing rhythm and blues and black music from since the beginning of time. But Marc Bolan was one of the first to really incorporate it into his work and work with black artists and before Bowie. Um, and that also, everything that seems kind of normal now and something we take for granted was not then. And he was a groundbreaker in many ways, but it's also why I think his music sounds so modern now, and I don't think it sounds dated. I actually don't think there's the thing that struck me the most when I did my deep dive was that it did not feel dated in any way. And I would defy any person of any age to listen to any of the songs and say, "Oh, this is old," or it doesn't happen with his music. It's strange. Been working on this for a while, and I test it out with people of all ages, and they all have the same reaction if they like music.
couple of observations about what you just said and the Tolkien thing, and that is, I wonder how much of an influence he had on the music that eventually became a big part of Led Zeppelin.
Well,
Are they coming at from a different perspective? It just
I
seems like that sensibility, the lyrical
I don't, I
sensibility.
don't, I don't know if they influence them, and those are people I have familiarity with, Rob
Okay,
Plant and Jimmy Page. I can't say that Marc Bolan influenced them. I can say that they came from a very similar place,
okay,
that they were in the same mystical,
right.
uh, if you're really interested, there's a great book by Rob Young called Electric Eden. And I'd like to give it a plug because it was very influential on me. Um, and he talks about the long, deep history of British folk music.
Yes,
And they are all connected to that same place.
absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and so yes, that
Well,
that the way I can see it.
And that takes me back to Fairport Convention, Stylized Span, all of
Absolutely.
those guys. I love that
Incredible
music.
string band.
John Fahey, yeah, all those people were so. Jethro Tull was influenced by them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's all that's one of the more unexplored parts of British music for me. But whenever I hear it, I'm always drawn to it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And you can hear it. And what Mark did was when he was in the same category of the group of musicians you just mentioned, he was also, don't forget he had been in a punk mod band before he did the hippie thing,
Right.
before he did what you're talking about, the English folk. He really connected all of those genres. And once he fell in love with the electric guitar and Eddie Cochran and that kind of music, he fused it all. And I don't think for him there was a great separation. I think it was just a pure love of all of these genres that he is one of the few who, like Led Zeppelin, successfully brought it all
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
People forget that Led Zeppelin wrote some beautiful acoustic music.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the same way that the early blues performers, the Muddy Waters, all the guys who brought Dylan to the party, the
Yeah,
folk music, the white folk music, the black folk, folk music, really. And then
correct.
that where that ended up, how that influenced bands and people of great artistic vision moving forward. So I think that roots music. I go back to the field music that was Smith. I forgot his first name. Did for Smithsonian. I listen to that every once in a while. I can't remember his first name. He went out into Appalachia and recorded artists all over the country.
Oh,
All,
not Smith. Oh, maybe it was Smith, but it was and he had the recorder.
yeah, so is it Homer Smith? Does that sound right? No,
I,
I'm
I,
sorry.
I know who exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, and
Well,
you
then
listen.
there's
You listen to that, and then you hear, early black artists who are, anyway, I'm, again, once again, I'm going, this is, I was afraid this conversation was going to take me down these rabbit holes, but because there's so much I want to talk about, but, gosh, at the end of the day, Marc Bolan comes across in this as an open, as someone who was generous with his life, with his purpose and bringing people along with him in the film. That's the thing that comes across to me is that he was a genuinely good person. I don't know if that's too simple to say it that way, but he was a genuinely a searcher, a seeker who wanted to bring people along with
yeah.
him for the ride.
Who knows what a good person is? But I
Right.
can tell you from the people I talked to, he was an open, very open person and generous and
Yeah.
curious,
Yeah.
excited, and authentic. It wasn't put on.
You have great people in this film. You mentioned Hal Willner as kind of the ringmaster of all of this. Setting a mood in the studio for these artists to create, to see the interaction with each other as they move through these songs. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And
Thank you very much.
yeah, and let's again plug the film and the album, um, Angel-Headed Hipster. That's available, I assume. Where can people pick up the
I
album?
But the album is available on Amazon and digitally through all the digital
Yeah,
downloads that you can do. But there is a vinyl, there is a CD. It's in all forms. Unfortunately, the album came out right when lockdown started. And Mark's induction to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame happened at the same time. So that was very quiet. So I'm like a few years, I started the whole thing, but I'm like a few years late with my product here to get it all out there. But it's gonna happen. I mean, I know I already opened in the UK commercially, and people are still buying the DVD and the album. It's great.
it's great.
So I hope the same thing happens here because we're going on home entertainment next week on the 5th, and it's going to be, available for video downloads on all those streaming platforms. And I guess I'm allowed to announce that mid-October, for those people who still have DVD players, we're doing a DVD
Good.
with director's commentary.
Oh, great.
Bill Kerbishley is on it with me, and
Very good.
it's good.
Yeah,
So yeah,
you're getting released through Greenwich, the distributor here in the U.S., right?
and DVD will be through Greenwich and Kino Lorber.
Kino Lorber. Oh, great. Oh, perfect. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this. There's so much to recommend about this. Gaining a chance. I love Nick Cave sitting at the piano, going through. You could see him going through the song that he's singing, processing it, talking about how it influenced him. Seeing Bono talk about the music, and just there's everyone in the film has something deeper to say about the music as well as about Marc Bolan and the influence and impact he had on their lives.
Thank you so much. Wow, I feel the same way. So it's nice to hear that other people feel that way. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Again, the film is called
Mhm.
Angelheaded Hipster, the songs of Marc Bolan and T. Rex. I recommend this. Look for this. You mentioned all the different ways that you can see this and listen to it, and certainly hope that you all will, because it is well worth your time. I love the stuff with Bowie back and forth about his relationship with Mark, and that kind of back and forth is a beautiful part of the film and his story as well. Thank you, Ethan Silverman, for your work and for your time.
Thank you, Mike, for your kind words and your time to help us get the word out there. Thank you.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.